Great. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's 811 PRA webinar on systems mapping from outreach to move-in. Before we get started, I just have a couple of housekeeping tips to go over. So today's webinar is being recorded, and a copy will be sent to you following the webinar. There'll be time for questions today after all the presentations, and you can ask questions by using the questions box you see in the slide, or you can also ask your questions verbally. Just be sure to enter your audio PIN, and you can do that by pressing pound, your audio PIN number and pound on your phone's keypad, and then raise your hand using that raise your hand function you see on the slide. And that's going to let me know that you want to speak, and I can unmute you. So I'm going to turn things over to HUD. So from HUD, we have Marvis Hayward and Katina Washington, and from TAP, we have Lisa Sloan. So I'm going to turn things over to Marvis, who's going to give you an overview of today. Marvis?
Thanks, Stacy, and hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us on this webinar today. We're very excited to have you all with us, and we're excited about this topic we have today regarding systems mapping. So just to give you a brief overview of what we're going to be discussing today, the mapping system that we're going to be talking about is focusing on the partnerships that we have with our PRA program. We're going to have an overview of that systems process, and then we have 3 states, Texas, Maryland, and Louisiana, who are going to show us some examples of their particular mapping processes that they use. We have some software options that we want to pass along to you, and then there will be an opportunity for you all to have ask questions and get answers from us, and then we'll talk a little bit about our next steps. So let's go ahead and get started. So partnerships. Partnerships is key to the PRA success of the program. It goes without saying that the partnership is crucial to the program. And as you recall, this was supported by our request for you to submit the interagency partnership agreement and also the information that you provided within that agreement to solidify those partnerships in our NOFA application. So the partnerships that we're speaking about now are the ones that are between the State Housing Agency, the Medicaid Agency, the State and Human Service agencies, as well as those that exist with your owners, your property managers, and the local or county level service providers to include the nonprofit agencies. So in addition to the partnership being critical, it's also complicated because there's a lot of moving parts. And by that I mean there are lots of partners, and it's really critical that everyone understands how your state-specific system is set up, meaning who is eligible for the program, how they apply, how they're referred, when they come to the top of the waiting list, and how long, and how they're assisted with the move-in process. Lots of parts. So for your program to be successful and supported at the local level, it will be important for you to be able to fill the units in a timely manner and to ensure that the tenancy is successful. So the goal of this system mapping is to ensure that that can happen. It's to actually give you a tool to map out your process, your system, to ensure that happens. So this process, as I said, is going to help you achieve those goals. The systems mapping can assist with the initial clarification of roles and responsibilities. As we said, there's many moving parts, there's many partners, just clarifying who does what, when, and timelines associated with that. It can be an ongoing touchstone for your program, or it can be, or in other words, a blueprint for actually mapping out how you're going to do this. And it can help you to ensure timely referrals to the units, which is going to equal success for all of us. You in leasing up the units, as well as for the PRA program in general. And one final thing is that now is the perfect time to start. It's not too early. So the sooner you get started on this, the sooner the better outcome you will hopefully have when it comes to leasing up the units. So now Stacy and Lisa from TAC will use the whiteboard to explain more about the systems mapping.
Thanks, Marva. When we talk about system mapping, we mean literally writing down the process by which the program moves, as Marva said, and as you can see up here on the whiteboard, from outreach, in which potential applicants are identified, to move-in of eligible tenants. Many of the FY12 grantees have used a visual aid, like drafting a flow chart, similar to the very simple flow chart you see Stacy putting up on the whiteboard. And shortly, we'll hear from 3 FY12 grantees about the systems mapping process they use. But first, we wanted to talk to you a bit about the generic process. Systems mapping is a repetitive process. It's not likely that you'll get the process all down on paper the first time. One way to think about this is kind of in 3 parts. First, the initial work will be laying out the process itself. This is likely to take more than 1 meeting or conference call. Once you've laid out a version of the process, you'll add a layer over that, indicating which state, county, local agency or department is responsible for each piece of the process. Once everyone feels comfortable with that, you'll add the time frames for each part of the process. Next, let's look briefly at each component of the process and some of the questions that we think you might want to be thinking about as you draft your own particular state PRA program process. Let's start with outreach. When should the outreach begin? Which agencies in your program are going to be responsible for conducting that outreach? Application. Where does one obtain an application? Who can complete or submit an application? Can an individual applicant do that themselves, or must a case manager do that on their behalf? Is it what we would call a closed referral system? For example, a state service agency must make the referral. How does review of eligibility occur? Is there an appeal process? Who conducts the appeal? And are there time frames for that appeal? Moving on to tenant selection. Who manages the waiting list? What's the tenant selection process? How many applicants are selected for each referral? 1, 3, what's going to work for your program? You'll have to work that out through this process, this conversation with your partners and mapping it out. We hope will help you answer some of those questions if you're not already sure. And finally, or almost finally, the referral. When referrals come up, the applicants receive assistance, for example, transportation to view a unit. Which agency or agencies provide this assistance? How long will an applicant have to view the unit and indicate interest? A full week? Less time? More time? What's the owner screening process like? Does that allow time for reasonable accommodations? And finally, move-in. Does the applicant receive assistance with move-in? Which agencies provide that kind of assistance? How long does it take to secure a security deposit or furniture? How long does it take to arrange for support services? How is the appropriate support service provider notified that the individual is going to be moving into a PRA unit? If arranging for supports or any of these other items takes a long time, it's going to have an impact on how quickly a unit can be filled. And you're going to want to make sure that your process that you're mapping out can accommodate that time frame or try to shift the time frame. Now that we've looked at this very straightforward version of a process chart, let's take a look at some different ways the FY12 grantees have done this. I think Katina?
Thank you, Lisa. That was great. Now we're going to turn it over for some examples. We've asked about 3 FY12 grantees to show us their systems map and talk to you for a few minutes about how they produce their map. And they're going to talk to you specifically about a few things. What was their process involved in creating the map? Who was involved? How long did it take? Have they come back and looked at it from initially when they began? what software did they use. And then after the webinar, you will receive some copies of the systems maps from these 3 states. So first, I'm going to turn it over to Texas. So Spencer, you can take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much. So Spencer Duran with Texas, and I'm also here with Bill Craner. We both work on the 811 program at the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs. So the map that we're looking at today is essentially the lease-up process, and it's mostly a reflection of decisions that were made during our pre-planning of the 811 program. And we completed a lot of that planning under funding from the Real Choice Systems Change Grant, where we essentially pulled together a group of stakeholders and kind of mapped out our target populations, the services, and the general flow of the program. So we kind of had the interagency agreement already laid out before we started working on the actual detailed map of how that would work. So it was planning, and then the interagency agreement, and then this document, and then this document actually has turned into several standard operating procedures, program manuals, and things like that. So the way that we started this was we built it at TDHCA first, and then we sent it out to our service partners. Our 3 target populations are essentially served by 4 and now 5 entities, including managed care, our Department of Aging and Disability Services, Family Protective Services, and so on. So for us, it's usually best if TDHCA kind of gets the ball rolling initially and then kicks it out to our partners for feedback and editing. So the actual process that we used to develop this was, it was Kate and I, whenever she was still in the program, and we were in a room with a third person who was sitting in front of a computer using Microsoft Visio, and that person's work as they were physically creating this was projected up on the wall. So it was great. So Kate and I just got to essentially verbally describe how the 811 program worked, and the person on the computer was taking notes and building the process map. I think that's a really good kind of way to start this. And the map started out very simply. Again, it started with a few key set of principles from our planning time, and then our interagency agreement, and then our first couple iterations of this were pretty simple. So it has definitely changed since its first form. So one of the great things we did was we brought Bill on, and Bill has a lot of experience with HUD systems, such as TRACS and EIV. And so we also found that there was a kind of an issue with our process. He pointed out that an owner during the property level screening could actually find something that would bar that person from being eligible for the program. So we were kind of thinking that once they're program approved through us, then they're good to go. But there could be something that comes up during the property level screening. So we kind of added that loop in the bottom left-hand corner, and also created an appeal process for them in that scenario as well. And the last thing I want to kind of say on this is we developed this process map alongside the development of our Oracle database, which we call CMTS, the Compliance Monitoring and Tracking System. And that CMTS, or that Oracle database, is the database that we are going to be using to manage the waiting lists, the properties, all the tenant information, and all of that. So we were developing that with our IT folks as we were also developing this process. So the technology and the process are kind of informing one another, and they kind of progress together. So if anyone has any questions, I want to turn it over to Bill real fast to kind of go through some of the more detailed information about the process map itself.
The process map itself is, well, I don't want to say it's self-explanatory, but it is kind of convoluted. But it pretty much follows the straight line thinking of what we're doing in regard to decisions that need to be made during the lease-up process. Those are all diamonds, so screening is eligible or ineligible, whether the applicant wants to appeal, whether the appeal is successful, whether checklists are approved, whether they're eligible for the entire HUD program, whether they're eligible according to the tenant screening. Those are all kind of the things that the decisions are made off of, and then those all go into just loops where it gives the choice of either yes or no, and then based on that, you go down that line. So that's basically the way that it works, and it just follows along our level of how we would send tenants through the program just from our perspective. So that's pretty much just a good overview. I don't know if anybody had a question or anything. If not, we can pass it off to the next.
Yeah, and we're going to handle questions at the end. So if you guys have questions as you hear these presentations, definitely submit them in that written questions box. Great. Thanks, Spencer and Bill. I'm going to pass it back to Katina.
Thank you. That was a great presentation of your lease-up mapping. So now we're going to turn it over to Marilyn, who's going to discuss their PRA mapping. Marilyn?
Hi, this is Pat Sylvester with the Maryland Department of Disabilities. I'll partner with DHCD. I think Shalonda's on the line as well. So I'm going to walk you through sort of how we did this. We did it a little bit differently. We have 3 different mapping charts. One for the applicant process, one for the unit process, and one for the tenant issue process. And we did this in partnership. And so all 3 processes were done by the Maryland Partnership for Affordable Housing Advisory Group, and Lisa Sloan from TAC and Diane Dressler with the Community Life Resources both helped us immensely. And Diane would be on the line, but she's on a plane at the moment, so I'm stepping in. So the 3 state agencies were the Department of Disabilities, the Department of Housing, and the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, and we had their representatives from Medicaid, Behavioral Health, and Developmental Disabilities. We also had a developer representative, service providers, advocacy groups, and the Centers for Independent Living. It took us about 3 months, and we began in a very basic way. Staff came up with their sort of original outline, and these were done on sticky notes and flip charts, and they would come to the advisory group, and we would sort of put them up on a wall, and we'd talk through the different steps, and we'd move the stickies and the flowchart pieces of paper around until we sort of decided that this looked like a pretty good plan. And then at that point in time, there was, it was moved into, Diane used Microsoft Word Smart Art. And so the colors indicate different roles of different players, as you can see from the chart that's up on the screen. And the shapes also meant different things depending on what chart we were on. And we also talked a little bit about timing, so you'll see that timing is in the different boxes and who was responsible for doing what. All in all, it took us, as I said before, about 3 months. There was 1 iteration and then group meeting, there were revisions, and then another round of iterations. We probably had 3 in-person advisory group meetings. There were several conference calls among the staff and the state agency reps. and then interim phone calls just between the folks that were the Diane and Lisa's of the world who were actually doing the putting together the different charts. So I would say that we haven't done major revisions to the chart since we began, but we haven't actually, we're just starting to lease our first units right now. And it was useful to have all the players at the table because we were all focused on a little bit different piece of the puzzle. So as the housing folks were focused on making sure the units were filled up quickly, the health and mental hygiene folks could think about and give us information about how long providing services and transitioning might take, and the Department of Disabilities could focus on, what was it going to take to wait list manage, and sort of what was the time frames there, and what was a reasonable number to send to a property. And so we all had sort of different views, and so there was a lot of back and forth in trying to work through issues. And then a real important thing for all of us was to make sure that tenant issues were resolved so that a property would be comfortable, that if they moved somebody in and that person was not being a good tenant, so to speak, and it was midnight or 3 o'clock in the morning, or they had ongoing issues, they had a way to reach out and get assistance. So it really was a partnership. It really was a lot of back and forth, and I think what we've come up with has worked really well. We included it in both of our applications. And again, the Real Systems Change Grant helped us initiate this process early. And I'm guessing we'll make changes over time. We have other similar programs that are state funded, and we've used these process charts, what we call, they're affectionately called in Maryland bubble charts. And so we are all big fans of bubble charts. That's what I've got so far.
Great. Thanks so much, Pat. Before I turn it back over to HUD, Shalonda, I know you're on the line. Did you want to add anything?
No, Pat, that was fantastic.
Yeah, that's because you weren't there at the beginning.
Right. I wasn't there in the beginning. I came in after our beautiful bubble charts were done.
But she's a true believer now.
Yes, I am, in bubble charts.
Great. Thanks so much, Pat and Shalonda. I'm going to turn it back over to HUD, but if you guys have questions, just continue to submit them using the questions box. Katina?
Thank you, guys. Now, as you can see, the different processes that Maryland used in mapping out. So it was a little different, but it was the same message between Texas and Maryland. So now I'm going to turn it over to Louisiana. And Nicole, are you ready?
I'm ready, thank you. So I have 2 process maps to share. This first one, well, the one that you just saw, that one, was a process that we had when we didn't have as many players involved. So this is our project-based voucher permanent supportive housing program when it first started. The Louisiana Housing Authority, we had Quadell Consulting Services as our subsidy administrator of the rental assistance. And then within each region of the state, we had local lead agencies that were responsible for providing the services, and then we have the applicant in this legend. And as you can see, it's a Visio map as well, the colors representing who does what. And if you, and very similar to what you heard from Texas. So the second process map was taking that same process, but as we were switching to managed care. So you see we have Quadell again. We had our statewide management organization who wasn't even identified at that time. Then you had our Department of Health and Hospitals, which was green, and the 3 different program offices, and our service providers are yellow. So when we made this change, and you can see this is just a Microsoft Word process timeline, as we were making the change to managed care and the statewide management organization was going to be maintaining our waiting list and handling our referral process, we had months worth of meetings as we were discussing all of this to make sure that we were getting people identified as early as possible and referred to units as quick as possible. So we had bi-weekly meetings that were sometimes in person and sometimes via conference call, and many, many revisions of this, because when we first sat down with all of the players at the table, with the different program offices that we had and people coming from institutions and people coming from the street, everybody had their amount of time that it would take to get somebody ready to the point that they were ready for move-in of a unit. And so when we first sat down and did that, I think it looked like 6 months. And so what we realized through this process mapping, we were identifying unnecessary handoffs, duplication of effort, and opportunities to refine and improve the process so that we were getting as much done as quickly as possible. So, and I think outside of that, there's not much more to add than what the other two states have said. I think it just is always helpful to, for me at least, to see things visually and make sure that you are identifying all those different decisions and what happens to a person as they're going through the process. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Nicole. That was great. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Stacy, who's going to go over some ideas, some software ideas of what to use to help you and assist you in making your visual maps. So, Stacy?
Great. Thanks, Katina, and thanks to Texas, Maryland, and Louisiana for presenting. That was great. So the slide that you see on the screen now, some of you may have been wondering during the state presentations about what kind of software you can use to do these flowcharts to help folks visualize the process. And some of you may have already done charts in the past and found that sometimes the software can be tricky or cumbersome. So as was already discussed, several of the fiscal year 12 grantees used Microsoft Word or they used Microsoft Visio, and the slide provides, the first website provides very easy instructions on using Microsoft Word to create flowcharts. Really user-friendly, kind of goes step by step on how to make use of Word's templates. And then that second website provides alternatives to Microsoft Visio in case those on the line don't have that software, don't have access to that software. That second website is going to give you some alternatives to Microsoft Visio. And then you could also consider some other Microsoft software, such as Excel or PowerPoint. But there's also a number of online-based platforms that are free and that could really help you produce some great flowcharts and diagrams. So the ones you see on the screen, Google Docs, I'm sure everyone's familiar with. So this will allow your team members to edit and to comment in real time, which could be really great if you were a large state and say you had to meet with your partner agencies over the phone or through web conferencing. Platforms like Google Docs allow you to work on it in real time together. Another online platform is called Creately, and that's a website that provides some user-friendly flowchart templates that you can download and customize. And then that third option, the real-time board, was actually that virtual whiteboard that we were using today. Also a free platform, and like Google Docs, you can invite your team members to participate at the same time, so you all can be working and commenting and sharing all at once. And then finally, Prezi, which is another presentation format that's free that really provides an interactive diagram. If you wanted to actually walk through a process, Prezi will allow you to do that. So I'm sure that you all have a bunch of other suggestions, and if you do, I definitely encourage you to write them into the questions box so that we can tell other folks on the line about them. So now we're going to move on to the question and answer portion of today's call. And I know that we already have one written question. Just give me a second to pull it up. I will read it. And this one's for Texas. So Bill and Spencer, one of the attendees was wondering if you developed your application in-house or if it was developed by an outside entity.
In-house.
In-house.
Yeah, we have people here.
Some of the other questions that came in also, they were wondering if we'd be providing the state examples and the whiteboard following today's webinar. And yes, you will receive copies of all of the state mapping systems as well as a copy of that virtual whiteboard that we went through. And you'll get that with a copy of today's webinar recording.
There's a question here from a state asking whether these have to be handed into HUD. Is this like a required assignment? Katina? Marvis?
Yes, I mean, you're not physically handing it into us like this is a school homework assignment, but we do want you to bring your mapping exercises to the convening so we can share. We're going to have a workshop on it, so you may have to present. So, you know, please bring us your draft, you know, just some start of ideas of getting into the process if you have not fully thought it out at about time the convening has come around. But this is to get you to start thinking about it. So I'm going to turn it back over to Lisa and Stacy.
Okay, thanks. Another written question. It sounds like these charts took a long time. That's a big investment. Do the 3 states think this was worth that investment?
Oh, Maryland would definitely say yes. It certainly created a synergy among the partners. When you spend that much time together, you start to have a healthy respect for each other's jobs and expertise. And now that we're in the process of leasing up units, our bubble charts basically created the mechanism by which we did our tenant selection plan, figured out how many units, how many people we were going to send per unit. It's well worth the investment of time.
Yes, Spencer from Texas, I agree, because this is just a tool. So for this map, we were able to create our program's tenant selection plan, our vacancy payment policy, and build our database, and then also all of our program manuals. We've also used a similar process. You know, we've created a lot of these, and a lot of other process maps have been used to develop our financial administration SOP, including the way that we do our vouchering and admin payment processes.
The other point I'll make from Maryland is that the bubble charts were something we were able to share with the development community early on, and it really, I think, helped them understand that we were very aware of the need to fill units quickly and very aware of the need to make sure we were being responsible to property managers, and I think that made them a little bit more comfortable with this new idea and this new program.
This is Shalonda from Maryland. I'd also like to add that as I came into this program at the Department of Housing and Community Development after these processes were completed, as a new employee and new to this program, I can honestly say that they were a fantastic tool in helping me get up to speed. So as we hope this program, you know, continues for many, many, many years, this will end up being a legacy tool for a lot of our agencies.
And from Louisiana's point of view, as we were essentially building a program and administering it at the same time, having this just really clarified everybody's roles and set expectations around timing. And when you have so many different stakeholders at the table, your housing and your human service people, it really helps each other to understand what the other one is going through and makes it clearer. And then as it gets down to the, you know, the person, the case manager that's actually taking that person to see a unit, we often find that we can't communicate enough. So a tool like this can serve as that communication that to ensure that the same message is being passed down from layer to layer in the process.
And we have a follow-up question to the question that was directed at Texas a few minutes ago. So Texas, this attendee wants to know, how long was the development process? Was it fully written in Oracle?
No. So, so our actual process map document was developed with Visio, which is essentially a reflection of our planning efforts. But the Oracle database is is an active tool that we're going to be using. The map is kind of a static planning document, but the Oracle database system is what we're going to actually be using to enter tenant information, property information, manage the waiting list, and all of that. And we use our Real Choice money to develop that Oracle database in-house over the course of maybe 3 months, and then now we're coming back with maybe a couple more weeks worth of work to further tweak that Oracle database.
Thank you.
Great. A couple more questions we have here. Keep the questions coming. Let's see. The state says Maryland said they did charts with their stakeholders. Texas said the Housing Finance Agency did the first draft and then sent it out. I wasn't sure how Louisiana did theirs.
So the chart started from our subsidy administrator, Quadell, so they outlined what their understanding of the process was. That gave us a basis to then, when we had our meetings, we had the 3 different program offices from the Department of Health and Hospitals, Quadell, myself, once the statewide management organization came on board, them, as well as 1 or 2 of the service providers.
Thank you. A state writes that the chart seemed to be very focused on kind of the housing side, filling the unit, less about the services side. It seems like the services side would benefit from their own chart. Did this happen in any of the FY12 states?
I think if this is Louisiana, if you go back to the second chart that we did, I feel like we started from the point that somebody was, well, maybe I should back up and say that the other chart, if you don't mind. We had a lot of back and forth about the point that somebody got put on the waiting list and when they were deemed eligible for services. And when we first started this chart, if we had put everybody on the waiting list instead of first verifying are they eligible to receive the Medicaid services, then the process was going to take twice as long. So it really took that charting to get to that point. So you'll see there's outreach as needed, and then we were sending our top, what we called our ready pool of applications, to Magellan as the statewide management organization to verify the services. So we did go through that, and I could find, because there are so many different versions of this, one that does it, that shows it better, but we were trying to account for service eligibility, waiting list placement, to the point of, because this was our project-based voucher program, voucher eligibility, and then referral to the unit. So I think you can do them together.
Thank you very much. Did any of the other states want to speak to this point of the services side?
So in Maryland, we haven't necessarily done bubble charts on the service side, but recently we've certainly had some conversations with our Medicaid folks about and tried to map or understand their time frames for moving, particularly our priority 1 category, transitioning people from nursing facilities, so that they can understand. We understand the timeline for moving the folks, but they also understand the timeline for filling the units and making sure those 2 are coordinated, and that we sort of have a SWAT team approach, that something doesn't get bogged down in the bureaucracy. So we haven't gotten to the bubble chart, but we have sort of done a little bit of mapping and better communication at that level of detail.
Great. Texas, how about you guys?
Yeah, we kind of did we didn't literally put a chart on it, but we did think a lot about the process whenever we were developing our manuals for the program along with TAC. So it was TAC and TDHCA along with our service partners coming together and create actual program manuals. And those manuals are about 40 pages each, and they detail kind of, you know, they go more in-depth detail of how, you know, someone is verified to be eligible for services, you know, the affirmative marketing, and then how the actual referral takes place. And we won't put anybody on a waiting list until their service provider certifies that they are eligible for and are poised to receive community-based services once they're in the community.
Thanks, Spencer.
Great. So folks can keep sending in their written questions, and as we wait for more, I wanted to stop and see if HUD, Marvis, or Katina, do you have any questions?
No, we don't have any questions.
So still waiting for more written questions to come in, and in the meantime, Maryland, Louisiana, Texas, any kind of final words or final thoughts on your mapping system process?
Any advice for the newbies on the call?
Start yesterday.
I think I already said it, but I would just, that once you have it done, you're not done. That's just what your process looks like right now. And to remain flexible so that as different areas of improvement or whatever change in your process happens, something just isn't working, that you make refinements and adjustments as needed. In Louisiana, we're getting ready to go through yet another change, so this program just keeps changing and evolving. Our statewide management organization went away. The program office within the Department of Health and Hospitals that administers our permanent supportive housing program took on more responsibility, but now we're getting ready to change to 5 managed care providers. So we'll be doing yet another map.
Yeah, find the
yeah,
person
same thing for Texas, where managed care carve-in continues to impact our interagency agreement and all planning and policy documents that stem from that.
The other piece of advice, it does change, but the other thing is the person that's in sort of your lead person for putting it together has to have a very focused ability to sort of get down at the level of detail. And we were lucky that we had Diane Dressler, who basically was our bubble chart organizer, and Lisa, who assisted us and could bring those of us who were more sort of big picture down to the specifics of, well, but if you don't say this, then how are you going to handle? So you probably have somebody in your shop that is more gifted than others at creating the charts themselves.
All right. Thanks so much again to Maryland, Louisiana, and Texas, and thanks to everyone who submitted questions. We're going to keep this call going, and I'm going to turn it back over to Katina. Katina?
Thanks, Stacy. As you guys heard, it was some great advice they gave. Just remember that your map is a working document. It's something you probably have to think about constantly, and definitely partnership. It's never too soon to get everyone into the conversation. So that definitely was a great discussion. So what's next? So there's a couple of things we would like for you guys to do. We encourage you to start your mapping process as soon as possible. Your TAC lead can definitely be a great resource for you. You can also, another idea would be to revisit old process charts of any other programs you've done process charts for, or different and examples from different agencies. Another thing is we would like for you to do, as we stated earlier, we would like for you to bring your draft map to the convening and be prepared to work on it at the convening and possibly present. This would be a great chance for you to work with your other peers, especially those from the FY12. You can also have these, HUD, we're here to assist you as well, and your TAC person is here to assist you in this process. Now, next up on the screen, as you can see, you'll see contacts, myself, Marvis Hayward from CMS, you have John Sorson, and from TAC you have Lisa Sloan and Stacy Fox, as well as your TAC lead person, who you can all communicate if you have any questions, issues, concerns, anything involving PRA. So we have some, up on the slide, you'll see some upcoming webinars. Our next webinar and meeting will be the peer-to-peer grantee call, September 10th. We'll have another grantee webinar, and this topic will be on the environmental review. We'll have someone from HUD, environmental specialist, who will be discussing for the environmental review and also take any of your questions, and that will be September 17th. We have one planned for October 8th, but we have yet to decide on a topic, so if you have any suggestions, please, you can contact myself or Marvis or Stacy with any of your suggestions for the grantee webinar. And then, of course, our big convening coming up October 28th and 29th, and it's here in Washington, D.C. So I'm going to turn it back over to Stacy to close out.
Great, and I just wanted to give a quick update on that travel memo that HUD spoke about on the last grantee call. So you should be receiving a copy of that either later this afternoon or by tomorrow morning. So look in your inboxes for that. And if you don't receive it, definitely reach out to me, Stacy, and I'll make sure it gets to you. So thanks everyone for joining today. Once again, a huge thank you to the states who presented today. So Nicole in Louisiana, Spencer and Bill in Texas, and Pat and Shalonda in Maryland. Much appreciated. Thanks everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.